I'd like to welcome you back to another class with the Peaceful Solution Workplace Manual. And we're going to be picking up tonight on page 128. But I want to review what we were covering at the close of class last week. On page 125, we learned that honesty means following the rules. So when the rules are set up, we know that they're set up for a reason. We might not always know what the rules are, or we might not always understand them, but they're there for a reason, and it doesn't hurt to ask, which is one of the concepts that are always taught by the Peaceful Solution. On page 126, we learned that honesty means truthfulness, or being truthful. And that's a very important part when you're working in the workplace, because your supervisors have to know that they can trust you and they can depend on you. And when you say something, they have to know that what you're saying is true. Then we covered honesty means giving credit to others. Many times in the workplace, you'll find people that take all the credit and not give it where it's due. And this is something that also shows how honest one person can be. And now let's go to page 128, and we're going to start with the heading, Honesty Means Being Trustworthy. Now think about what the word trustworthy means. It means that you're dependable. It means that you can be trusted to do what you've been asked to do. So let's begin reading. To have our superiors trust us to follow through on our obligations and to do all assignments to the best of our ability is an honor. It's not an obligation. It is an honor to be able to do what we're required to do to the best of our ability. There are many ways we can earn the reputation of being a trustworthy person, one of which is by being honest. An honest employee not only tells the truth, but can also be trusted to adhere to the company policies, to not murmur against company decisions, to follow instructions, and to respect the rights and property of others. Now let's look back at each point that was just brought out. An honest employee not only tells the truth, but is trusted to adhere to company policies. You're working for that company, and that's one of the things when you're teaching this, you help them to understand that they're working for this company, and that's where they're going to get their paycheck. That's where they're going to get their livelihood. And so they have to have that kind of respect for the people that they're working for. So adhering to the company policies help them to understand that those policies are put in place for a reason. And again, we might not understand the reasons, but they're there. Not to murmur against company decisions. When there's murmuring going on, it creates conflicts. And then you have an actual wall in the workplace where there's division and these different things. So you want to help to guard against that as well. Follow instructions. You might not understand the instructions, or you might think one step is just ridiculous, but that step might be one of the most important steps that could prevent somebody from getting seriously injured. And to respect the rights and property of others. I don't know how many people have had things that have been on their desk removed from their desk because they don't have that respect for this. But that's something to also make sure that you drive home. Because just because it's on someone's desk laying out in the open, it doesn't give us the right to just help ourselves to it. It belongs to that person and the work that they're doing. And if you take it and forget to bring it back, you could hinder the work in another area. Continuing on. Read the following scenario and answer the questions that follow. See page 120 for answers. Alan was given inter-office mail to deliver to the assistant manager. While on the back staircase, where he was sure no one could see, Alan quickly browsed the contents of the envelope he was to deliver. He learned the salaries of everyone in the agency and saw that he was one of the lowest paid. Alan was immediately offended and decided he was working much too hard for the salary that he was earning. So let's look at what just took place here and what experience Alan ended up with. Alan was obviously a trusted employee, otherwise they wouldn't have given him the mail to deliver. But did he deserve the trust that he was given? Now, think about that. If he was given the trust, that means they're trusted. But if you go and break the rules, if you look where you shouldn't be looking, then you really don't have the right to that trust. And if we look back on page 120, Alan was obviously a trusted employee, but did he deserve the trust he was given? And then it asks us to explain our answers. And remember, all these activities that the Peaceful Solution has is for our benefit. It says, if he feels comfortable opening and reading private mail, it would seem that he's very untrustworthy because he didn't respect the privacy that was within that mail. Number 2, sometimes dishonesty backfires. How did it backfire for Alan? And then it asks us to explain our answer. Well, it backfired because he learned that he was one of the lowest paid persons on the wage scale. But does he know all the duties that pertain to everybody else that was receiving more money? Were they there longer as far as seniority and everything goes? These are things that he might not have even stopped to consider, but it backfired because now he's upset because he's paid lower than others. And if we look back to page 120, the answer that the Peaceful Solution also offers is he found out information that upset him because he looked at something he shouldn't have. And then number 3, how do you think Alan will be affected by the information he read? How might it affect his job performance? Well, in this paragraph above, it said he thought he was working too hard, and so that's going to affect his work ethic. And many times, if you hear, I don't know how many can relate to this, but how many times have you heard, oh, somebody got a raise, and yet you don't see them working as hard as you think you're working? How did it affect your attitude? When you can take real-life experiences and apply them to what's in front of you as you're teaching the Peaceful Solution, you bring a realistic theme to it. It brings it real. It makes it alive. And that's something that if you can connect with your audience and connect with your class and help them to understand that, it will help them to understand what they're teaching. Now let's look at page 120 again. And the answer on number 3 that the Peaceful Solution gave was he is now bothered by something that he didn't even know about before because he looked at what he shouldn't have. It could cause anger and bitterness. He might develop a bad attitude. He might end up walking away from his job. Continuing on. Being trusted is an honor. Back on page 128, being trusted is an honor. But trust is not something that is automatically given. It is earned over a period of time by proving to be honest, diligent, and responsible. But remember, even though honesty or being trusted is something that's earned over time, respect is automatic. You should respect all life. Once we have earned the trust of our superiors, we must diligently maintain that trust and never abuse it or take it for granted. Because once that trust is broken, it's very, very, very hard to gain it back. Keep in mind that our true character is revealed by what we do, even when no one can see us. And that's something the Peaceful Solution has taught us, that your true character shows forth with what you do when no one's looking. Alan's decision to purposely read information that was intended for someone else proves that he was dishonest. And if you look at the quote, it says, respect should be automatically given. Trust must be earned. And I want to share with you an experience that when I first started working at the place that I just recently retired from, There was someone that was trying to cause trouble, and they were spreading lies about something that I supposedly had done. And when my boss heard about it, she immediately got very upset. And she asked the person that was telling her that, well, who was it that did this? And the person told her that it was me. And at that moment, my boss said, I knew it wasn't true because of how you conduct yourself when you're here at work. So you know that it can go a long way, because no matter whether somebody's looking or whether you don't think somebody's looking, it still reflects in how you carry yourself and the things that you do. Okay, so let's go back to page 120 and let's read procedure number 5. Procedure 5 says on page 120, have students read and do the scenarios from pages 129 to 134. Discuss as a class. And again, I can't emphasize how important the discussions are when you're having your classes and when you're teaching the subject. Explain that when all employees strive to be punctual, routine runs smoothly. When all employees strive to be punctual, routines run smoothly, and trust and confidence in employees are developed. Also emphasize the importance of respecting authority by diligently adhering to rules and policies. Both timeliness and not usurping authority are additional ways honesty can be demonstrated in the workplace. We should never spread gossip, falsely accuse, or willingly lie about a coworker. This steals the reputation of others and is not honest. So let's go back to page 129 and let's look at what all of this says. Honesty means being timely. An efficient work environment is based upon many aspects. One being scheduling, which aids in providing structure and routine. Break and lunch times are an important part of the structure and routine of our workday. Now, I'm going to sound kind of, I don't know, hypocritical reading this part because I'm guilty of never taking a break most of the time, except that I have a supervisor that is kind of insisting on it right now. But anyhow, we need that time. And it does give us that break, that breather that we need, because sometimes the pressures at work can be so great that it's important that you step away from it. And I tend to step away from it when it gets so much that I'm ready to explode and I better get away. So this was meant for me. But anyway, continuing on. They give us some much needed quiet, personal time, which alleviates stress and might even allow us to get a few errands done as well. But it is up to us to diligently respect the time allowance we are given and keep the break and lunch times allotted. So if you're given 15 minutes, your break is 15 minutes. If you have a lunch hour of an hour, where I worked it was a half hour. That's what your time should be. If you're going to need more time, then it's okay to ask. They might say no, but as we'll learn further on, there's a reason for that kind of structure. If we need extra time, we should ask someone who has the authority to make that decision and then accept the answers given. We should never make the assumption that it is okay to take additional time for breaks and lunch without permission. Taking the allotted amount of time for breaks and lunch demonstrates honesty. A lack of honesty can cause conflicts, resentment, and distrust. Now, going back to break and lunch times are an important part of structure and routine. Ask yourself why and help them to understand why. Because, like I said, we all need that break away. And it's important to keep those things in mind because it helps us to get a better focus, when we've had a stressful morning, when we've had a stressful midday. It helps us to get that focus back, and that's important. Read the following article about the theft of time. What is the definition of time theft? What exactly is time theft? Time theft at work occurs when an employee accepts pay from their employer to work for work that they have not actually done or for time they have not actually put into their work. Since the employee is not actually doing the necessary amount of work during their shift, it is considered a theft of time from the company. Time theft is not always easy to detect and can come in many forms and many levels of severity. Now that's something that you can stop and think about your workplace and how you have experienced it within. You have the person that comes to work late or goes home early, but if the job isn't started or finished at the right time, somebody's got to finish it. So not only are you taking advantage, especially if you're a salaried employee, somebody's got to take up the slack. And you can also steal time by playing on your devices. I don't know how many times I would come out of my office and see people watching movies on their phones rather than working. And it was very frustrating because you couldn't get yourself caught up while others weren't doing what they were getting paid to do. So these are the ways that time can be stolen. Types of time theft in the workplace: time card theft or time clock theft. Time card theft can occur in a few different ways. If an employee does not show up for their shift at work, but they have a friend punch in and out for them that day, it would be considered time card fraud. Another way that time card fraud occurs is when an employee lies about the amount of hours they have worked in a single shift. Now, if you have a time clock where you have to actually use your fingerprints and everything like that, like we talked about last week, it's harder to steal time that way. But there's still ways. You could end up you've got the one that goes out for a cigarette break every hour, and they're out there for 15 minutes, even though, they're really just talking and things. So there's many ways of stealing time that way. Overextended breaks. Another way that time theft occurs in the workplace is when employees take too much time on their given breaks, such as leaving for break early, coming back from break late, or when the employees take more breaks in a shift than they are allowed. This is one of the most common types of theft of time in the workplace. And breaks I've seen in other places that I've worked are some of the biggest abused breaks, the biggest abused time frames and things like that. Over on page 130, it says excessive personal time. Oftentimes, employees spend parts of their workday making and taking personal calls to deal with personal and home situations, or spend time checking and sending email that is non-work related. While sometimes this is necessary or allowed for some employees, when these situations are abused is when they become forms of time theft in the workplace. So stop and think about your experiences and think about how you've witnessed some of these things within the different areas or jobs that you've worked in over the years, and use those experiences and how you felt to connect with your audience, to connect with the students that you're teaching. The next one is internet time theft. One of the most common and difficult to detect forms of office time theft are employees who use technology for non-work related purposes. Time theft could entail everything from browsing the internet to spending time on social networking sites and texting during work hours. That was a big one. We'd have people come up to the front desk where they would check into the hotel and everything, only to find the desk clerks on their phones. And they would finish what they were doing before they'd even address those that were trying to check into the hotel. We had a policy, it was called the 10-4 rule. And what that meant was when they got 10 feet from you, you had to make eye contact with them. It was a way of acknowledging them and letting them know, I see you're here. If they got within 4 feet of you, you'd have to actually greet them or say something, hi, how are you doing? Or if you see them going out the door, it's cold today, the wind's blowing, just anything to give that verbal communication. But with technology today, it's harder and harder for people to make those personal connections. Continuing on, it says, read the following scenario and answer the questions that follow. See page 121 for answers. Emily needs to run a few errands on her lunch break. She only had an hour. Even though she tried to complete her errands as quickly as possible, she was still over 20 minutes late returning from lunch. As soon as she walked in, her supervisor asked to speak with her privately. Jane, the next person to go to lunch, glared at her. Oh no, thought Emily, as she walked to her boss's office. Now, how many have ever experienced that? That you have someplace you have to be, but the person that is supposed to come back from their break hasn't come back from their break. And it's messed up your plans. Because for those that have a limited amount of time, and if you have things that you have to do, it cuts in and it affects that. And then you're in a stress mode for the rest of the day. So help everybody to understand the effects that these choices make on them. So let's look at the questions. Why do you think Jane was upset? Well, what if Jane had a doctor's appointment and she only had 20 minutes to get there? Now she's going to be 20 minutes late because her relief was 20 minutes late, not to mention the time that relief is in the boss's office to be corrected. So it's a ripple effect, which is something that we've learned within the Peaceful Solution. 2, why do you think Emily's boss wanted to speak to her? Probably because she didn't take the time to call. Most bosses are very understanding, and if you call them and say, hey, I'm in a situation, and I'm going to be a little bit late, then the boss could have checked with Jane and asked Jane, is it okay if so-and-so's running late? If not, then arrangements could have been made. And the third one, if you were Emily's boss, what would you say? How would you handle the situation? So think about it. If you were the boss, if you were there to correct Emily, what would you say? Well, you could begin by saying, could you explain to me why you were late? To get her side of the story, because remember, there's more than one side to every story. And then how would you handle the situation? Would you automatically be uptight because the schedule has been broken? Or would you try to use the Peaceful Solution teachings and listen to what they had to say? Now let's look back to page 121. Page 121. And let's look at the answers here. Honesty means being timely. Why do you think Jane was upset? She had to wait before she could go to lunch. She might have had plans. Number 2, why do you think Emily's boss wanted to speak with her? For returning from lunch late, and not showing consideration by calling. Like I said, you can have that consideration by asking for that extra time. And number 3, if you were Emily's boss, what would you say? How would you handle the situation? And of course, there's going to be different ways that people would handle the situation. And I encourage you when you're teaching the class to get as much interaction as possible, because that's how we learn from one another. I might choose to handle a situation one way, and then someone in the audience shares a different way, and that could click and say, hey, that might work out better It might not be as offensive, or things like that. So that's why sharing within the peaceful solution is really important. Okay, let's continue on. It says in the paragraph below the questions on page 130, it demonstrates honesty to be conscientious about time and how it affects others, as well as the scheduling and routines in our work areas. In other words, conscientious means wanting to do what is right, especially to do one's work. That's what conscientious means. Getting paid for time spent not doing our assigned tasks is dishonest, wasteful, and unfair. When we take our allotted times for breaks and lunch, we take our fair share. By doing so, we demonstrate honesty. So when we stay within our breaks, we're demonstrating the honesty that we have for the other people that are in the room or in the workplace. Now in the little box it says, speaker number 1, I'm headed out. I have half an hour for lunch. Speaker number 2, great, you want to grab a quick bite? Speaker number 1, yeah, let's go to that new steakhouse across town, and there's this new shoe store over there that I want to check out. And then speaker number 2 brings back the reality check. How much time did you say you had for lunch? Because how long does it take to cook a steak to begin with? And then you want to go shopping afterwards? So we have to be real in the things that we do and how we plan our breaks and things like that. Okay, let's continue on page 131. Honesty means not usurping authority. Now the word usurp means to seize and hold a position, office, power, and so forth by force or without legal right. The pretender tried to usurp the throne. And then the second definition is to use without authority or right, employ wrongfully. The magazine usurped copyright material. Now, in the elementary program that the Peaceful Solution offers, we learned usurping authority taught that if you break rules, you steal the authority of the people that put the rules in place. So we want to keep those things in mind. And I'm not going to continue from here, but keep these things in mind as far as when we're going into usurping authority, because it's very easy. It might be as easy as just answering a question you don't have any right to answer. So we need to stop and take those things in mind and keep them in the forefront of everything that we do within the workplace. And with that, I'd like to present our next teacher.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I'm going to pick up right where she left off on usurping authority. The first paragraph says, an honest person would never make a decision that should be made by someone in authority without his or her permission. To do so would be usurping or stealing authority. Taking authority that belongs to someone else is not only dishonest, but can result in distress, wasted time and money, and could cause harm to others. Now, how many of you have ever been in a situation where you ask someone who is not necessarily an authority a question, and they give you an answer, and it makes you uneasy? Has anyone ever been in that situation, right? And you're questioning, okay, maybe the authority's not around at the moment, maybe they stepped out, maybe there's a time limit thing going on, and there's this battle in your head, right? Between, should I do this, should I wait, should I do this, should I wait? And the reason we have that battle is because we know that the right thing to do would be to wait for an authority figure. So we have that within us already. It's kind of a part of us. But then we're talking about how when people choose not to do that, the harm that could come from it. Because like she said, we learned in the elementary series that authority is there for a reason, to help us follow rules, to keep us safe, and more likely, they're more educated about the situation than we are. We might think we have all the facts, but they can make the educated decisions that they need to keep us safe and to keep everything running smoothly. So let's read the scenario. It says, "Do you have another power saw?" said Frank to the supplies clerk. "You better get the motor checked out on this one." "The other saws have been signed out," answered Mike, "but we did get a new saw at the last delivery. I'll sign it out for you." "If you're sure it's okay," answered Frank, so you can feel his uneasiness. Later that morning, Mr. Henry was logging in the deliveries and noticed that a power saw was not delivered in the recent order. It was listed on the invoice, but not in the delivery. It took him 20 minutes waiting on the phone to have the company tell him their records indicated the power saw was included in the shipment and had to double-check his delivery. He asked every employee in the receiving area, but none knew of a saw being delivered. He was just about to throw up his hands in frustration when he saw Mike returning from his break. "Do you know if a power saw was delivered this morning?" asked Mr. Henry. Yeah," answered Mike with a sheepish look on his face. "I gave it to Frank. His saw stopped working. I meant to leave a note for you, but I forgot." Mr. Henry turned a bright red. "I wasted 20 minutes on the phone trying to find out where the saw was, and you gave it out without it being logged into the system and without asking permission? Who gave you the authority? That equipment was not even inspected to make sure it was working properly. What if the equipment is defective and someone gets hurt?" By the time he asked the last question, he was speaking loud enough to be heard all the way down the hall. "Sorry, boss," responded Mike in a contrite tone. "I didn't think about all that." All right, so there's lots of things in this. Let's break it down before we go to the questions. Approximately how much time did the boss spend looking for a saw? He was on the phone for 20 minutes. Then he went and he asked all the employees. It probably took another 20 minutes. Then he double-checked and all of these things. Let's just say approximately 45 minutes went by. How many things could have been accomplished in that short or long period of time just because someone didn't ask? Then we have the fact that Mike simply forgot to leave a note. What did we talk about in the last chapter? Communication, right? Effective communication. And then he poses some very valid concerns, and Mike responds with, "Oh, I didn't think about all that," which tells us that he did it very impulsively, right? He didn't stop to think about all the consequences. So let's not make Mike's mistake, and let's do that. Question number 1, how did Mike usurp authority? And we know that's pretty obvious. He made a decision that wasn't his to make, and that answer is on page 121 that we're going to be referencing back to. He made a decision that wasn't his to make. He gave someone permission to do something that he didn't have the authority to give. Number 2, why were Mike's actions dishonest? And by not seeking the proper permission, he stole his boss's authority. And I would also think that he stole the safety of his employee as well. If something had gone wrong, he stole his employee's safety, and not to think of the consequences that would all ripple out from there. Number 3, do you feel that the boss had a right to be upset? Yes, of course he did. Not only was his authority stolen, like the answer says, but he's responsible for those employees. It's his duty and the duty of the company to ensure that everything runs smoothly. And by someone choosing to usurp his authority, his permission was stolen, the safety of everyone else was stolen, his employees' trust in him might also been stolen. Oh, if something had gone wrong, oh, the boss okayed that. No one else knows that that didn't occur, but you already start to affect the boss's reputation. All things that occurred because Mike didn't stop and think about that, right? So it has a really, really, really serious ripple effect. And at the bottom, it tells us that. It says, although it might seem harmless at the time, everything impulsive, seems harmless at the time, but we know about ripple effects, right? Usurping authority is a form of stealing and is therefore dishonest. And last week we talked about that accountability and we talked about morality, right? In the moment we can rationalize why it's okay, but when it comes down to it, there's the line between right and wrong, and if it's dishonest, it's wrong, and there's no way that you can rationalize it to make it okay. It says the key to ensuring that this does not occur is to remember to ask for instructions or clarification, rather than assume you can make a decision that is the responsibility of someone in authority. And I put the character trait of humility there. Because oftentimes, we might know it, we might be right, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that we go through things the right way. And you might know 80% of it, and the 20% that your authority knows might be the 20% needed to make sure it's done correctly, or the 20% needed to keep someone safe, or the 20% needed to make everything run smoothly. So always be humble, and it's okay to ask questions. It doesn't make you seem any less smart or like you don't know what you're doing. Humility, in fact, is a trait of someone who is responsible, a trait of someone who's trustworthy, a trait of someone who's reliable. It says, if Mike had asked the boss for permission to sign out the new equipment, he would have been instructed on the proper procedure. By making the decision to sign out the equipment on his own, Mike usurped authority, wasted time, and could have put his coworkers in harm's way. If you usurp authority and it results in loss of time, money, or someone getting hurt, you will be the one held accountable. Usurping authority is dishonest because it steals the right of an authority figure to make decisions about his responsibilities and to fulfill his obligations. Now, so we have the side of us being the one to usurp that authority, but let's put ourselves in the position of the boss or that employer. How would you feel if something went wrong because someone didn't take the time to ask you, right? Think of how that would affect you as an employer. So not only does it affect, yes, you and the people around you, but it affects them as well. And there's never a right reason to make a wrong choice. It's always going to end up coming back to you. Alrighty? Next one is honesty means not stealing someone's reputation. That's page 133. It says reputation is a noun. It's the overall quality or character as seen or judged by people in general. Number 2, it's a recognition by other people of some characteristic or ability. And I also referenced the character unit, page 90, because we also find reputation on that page as well. It says another thing that can be stolen in a workplace is someone's reputation. Our reputation is a combination of our behavioral choices and overall attitude that we become known by. So that's a very easy definition of what a reputation is. It's our behavioral choices and overall attitude that we become known by. Now, that word become implies that it's not something instantaneous. It takes time, right? A reputation can be built over years and years or months. That's something that takes effort, and you invest into it. It says, whether we are aware of it or not, people are always looking at the way we conduct ourselves and the way we respond to both positive and negative stimuli, especially in our work environment. So someone's always looking, all the time. Our reputation is something we carry with us wherever we go. Like our character, we talked about, maintaining it, and we take it's like our toolbox. It's not something that we can set down. And so as we're teaching this to other employees, like she said, if you leave your office and you see someone on their phone watching a movie, you are giving that person a reputation of who you are in that workplace. Whether it's a fellow employee who's like, okay, if it's a new employee, they may think, okay, this is the standards of the place. I could do that, all right. They do it. They could get in trouble for doing it. They could get fired, only because they're following the example of the people around them. If it's a boss, they now see how much value you put into that work environment. If it's an employee, they also see, okay, she's not pulling her weight around here. No matter what we do, the sad fact is people are always forming opinions about it, great or bad. So it's up to us to ensure that we're doing our best to make sure that it's a positive reputation that we're developing. It says, have you ever met someone for the first time and the person says, I've heard a lot about you? Do you break out in a sweat and feel waves of anxiety wondering what they might have heard? Okay, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I forget that people know who I am besides the people I interact with every single day. And so sometimes, when there's a lot of people around, someone will walk up to me and they'll say hi and they'll say my name, and I'm like, you know who I am, right? Am I the only one that ever does that? Okay, so that person who I maybe have spoken to once in 2 years, they knew me, they saw me from across the room, they said hi to me, and they said my name. what else do they know, right? So it's not just the people in our little bubble that we have to be aware of. It's everyone that's ever come in contact with us. They've seen you and they've formed some type of opinion about you. So a positive reputation is just as important to have as great references and can play an integral role in whether or not you will become a trusted employee or how fast you advance in your career. Now, it's not about just getting to a place, right? It's about how you get there. You can bring all the references. I did this, I did that, I did that. I accomplished this, I got my GED, I have this, I have that, I have that. But who are you as a person? Because that's what actually matters. So sadly, a positive reputation can be stolen from an individual just as easily as office equipment or supplies from the work area. Malicious gossip, slander, insults, and put-downs all play a role in stealing trust, respect, and confidence. Now, I'm going to use children again. I apologize. If you've ever seen a child take blocks, right, and they build something, and they take their time and they focus on it, and they have a reason for every place the block is, and they say, look, it's my giraffe. And if you say, oh, that's a very nice house, they look at you like, this is my giraffe. I placed every single block where it needed to be, and this is the way I want it to be. Now imagine that as your reputation. Every single action strategically placed to build the person that you want to be. If another child walks by and the side of their foot touches one block and the whole thing comes crumbling down. That's how a single sentence, a single malicious word, an insult, a slander can tear down all of that work, all of the time and the painstaking effort that it took to build that up. And so if you create that picture in your mind, it's a pretty devastating thing to do to someone. And we're going to read about that scenario now. It says, Belinda was on her way to be promoted to manager of the advertising department. She was a hard worker, respectful, and willing to share her knowledge. She had great ideas and was regarded by the administration as trustworthy and able to get the job done. Because many of Melinda's coworkers were envious of her success and resented the fact that their supervisors respected her capabilities, they began a smear campaign. They complained that she disregarded their input and ignored their contributions. They were so convincing that management slowly began to lose the trust and confidence in Melinda's ability to supervise others and run the advertising department. So there's a lot in there. First of all, we have a girl or a woman who was a hard worker. She was respectful, and she was noticed for that. And the others who might not have performed to those standards felt envious because they weren't recognized, which tells us that positive work ethic is what gets positive rewards, right? And she was on her way to do that. And because they realized that they weren't respected, they chose to tear her down. Now, question number 1. What type of reputation did Melinda initially earn with management? And on page 121, it tells us the answer, that she was trustworthy and she was able to get the job done. So she earned that. Remember, it didn't say what reputation did she have with management, how did they see her? No, she earned it. She worked for it, and that was who she was. That was who she displayed day in and day out, no matter who was around. Question number 2 says, it's on page 134, what changed the way administration regarded Melinda? And the answer is the smear campaign by her envious workers. And what is a smear campaign? It gives us the definition. It says, it's conveying false accusations or substantiated charge against a person, in that case, Melinda. Her coworkers lied about her to purposely ruin her reputation in the eyes of her authority. Now, it gave us 2 definitions. One is just false accusations. You just flat out lie. And the other one is unsubstantiated, which means that you have no facts. You have no evidence. You have no proof. You're not educated about the situation. You probably saw one little glimpse of it and then you ran with it. Are you lying? Technically, you're telling your version of truth, but did you stop to get all the facts? Again, your one sentence, your one opinion that you saw in the 5 seconds can completely ruin everything someone has worked for years and years or months and months. So that's an important thing to pay attention to. Doesn't have to be a complete lie, but if you didn't stop to get all the facts, you didn't stop to educate yourself, you didn't stop to investigate, you could potentially ruin someone over something that's simply a misunderstanding. And number 4, was Melinda's reputation stolen? Explain why or why not. We can all agree that yes, it was. Because her coworkers lied and accused her of being unfair. Number 5, do you think Melinda got the promotion as head of advertising? Most likely not, right? Because the management no longer saw her as the leader and a team player. So words can really tear you down or they can build you up, and they could do that same thing to another person. So back on page 134, it says, your reputation can be built on what others have heard about you. In Melinda's case, she had earned a positive reputation with her supervisors to the point where they deemed her fitting for a promotion. Yet, her coworkers negatively influenced their view of Melinda by intentionally speaking lies about her. Over time, and with continued slandered reports, her reputation was damaged. Melinda would have to endure the false accusations and make every effort to prove her integrity, or she might have to change her employment. So a few words can completely cost her her job. Now who knows, when her next job calls for a reference, if that management was just like, oh, well, she did this and this when she was here, it could be harder for her to get her next job. If it's harder for her to get her next job, is it harder for her to keep her house? If it's harder for, we can go on and on and on and on and on. But it started simply because of words. Someone said something that was not true, and now her whole life can be completely changed. It says to falsely accuse another means to hold that person accountable for something she didn't even do or say. To give your opinion about someone when reporting information is wrong because it's not based on fact. Be educated, getting all the facts and making sure they are correct before making a decision. We can't switch the order around. We can't, make a decision, then get the facts, and oh, okay, well, I've already made the decision. It has to be in that order. Getting all the facts, making sure that they're authentic, they're correct, and then make the decision. Continuing, it says, no matter what you might think of another individual, you must base your report on facts. Falsely accusing someone makes you a false witness. Now, let's go back to respect, right? Because respect is to value and appreciate someone, right? To show them care and concern. If you value another human being, it doesn't matter how you feel about them. It doesn't matter how they might have treated you. Their value doesn't leave. I was going to bring money and give y'all the demonstration. If you have a $20 bill and you squish it and you crunch it and you can step on it and you open it back up, it's still a what? It's still a $20 bill. And that's how we have to encourage everyone to look at their coworkers, their employers, no matter who it is. That person's value doesn't change simply because you're having a bad day. That person's value doesn't change simply because they said something you didn't like. That person's value doesn't change simply because they looked at you the wrong way. Respect is not based on our emotions. It's a standard and it's a moral code that we have to hold ourselves accountable to no matter what the situation is. And a false witness chooses to do the exact opposite of that. They disrespect and they're dishonest. It says, it is a sad fact that once people have formed a view of someone, such as Melinda in the scenario above, or after her reputation was stolen, it is very difficult for them to see you any other way. This is how generalizations are formed. And it doesn't say this in here, but also saying something to another coworker. If someone upsets you and you say something to them, tell them how you feel about it, that person can come back and apologize to you, make it right with you. Did you go back and tell them that they made it right with you? Because they're going to say next person, oh, I heard that so-and-so did this to so-and-so. You might not want to be around her. And the next person, oh, I heard that so-and-so did that, and so-and-so told me this. And by the time it gets to the fifth person, the story's changed. This person's this mean, horrible monster, and they've done all these horrible things. But it simply started from one small situation, by telling someone else, you could slowly ruin her reputation with her coworkers as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Because it is a proven fact that it is far more difficult to change a negative reputation than it is to build and maintain a positive one. With the Peace of Solution Character Education Program, one can learn to persevere through hardships and continue to demonstrate positive character, no matter what others say about you. That's an important one, right? On the receiving end of it, if your reputation has been damaged, I don't want to say ruined because it's not permanent. If it's been damaged, you have to believe the fact that you have value. You're that $20 bill. Doesn't matter if they've, crunched you, anything, you still have value. And by continuing to demonstrate it, not giving in to it and changing, oh, well, they already said this about me, continuing to demonstrate positive character, that's what matters. And the scenario proved that positive character is what is respected. Positive character is what's valued in a workplace. So continuing with that is the most important thing. It says, remember, a positive moral reputation is built over time by responsible choices and respectful interactions. It can easily be stolen by the selfish and thoughtless actions of others. We should never spread gossip or willingly lie about a coworker, authority, or anyone for that matter. It is a form of stealing and should never be practiced. So he broke down all the ways that it can steal, right? We can steal time. The time that it took you to go spread a lie about someone, what things could you have been doing, right? We can steal someone's future. We can steal their hope or their dream for something. We can steal their job. If it ripples out, we can steal their home. All of those things can simply come from the words that we say and to whom we choose to say them to. It says it also reflects negative character traits of the ones who are spreading rumors and severely damages their own reputations. So thinking back on that scenario, what if management found out that all of those people were lying? What kind of reputations would they have then? Is it worth it to say, okay, I'm going to ruin her reputation to get her job? Okay, you got the job. Great. Then they found out about all the things that you did to get it. Do you really think you're going to keep it? Do you really think you're going to get better opportunities in the future? No. Remember, there's never a right reason to make a wrong choice. And simply because if we talked in the junior high series about natural consequences, those things, they just come around, right? And sooner or later, someone's going to find out, and it will affect you. So the choices we make now don't just affect the people around us, but they affect the future of who we're going to be as well. Okay, so that concludes all the different ways that we talked about honesty. So now let's go ahead and turn back to the lesson plan. And procedure 6 says, conclude the lesson by reviewing the honesty checklist on page 135. Reiterate the importance of honesty in the workplace and emphasizing that where there is honesty, there is a foundation for trust, which is a rather lacking commodity in today's society. And positive character traits like consideration, respect, and courtesy will help build that strong foundation. So think of it as a rare gem. Everyone wants rare gems, right? Everyone wants something special. Think of honesty and trust in a workplace as something that's special and hard to find. And we could make the choice and encourage others to make the choice to be the people that create it and to guard it and maintain it in that environment. All right, so let's go over our checklist. On page 135, honesty checklist. Point number 1, follow all rules and regulations exactly. And I underline the word all and the word exactly. Can't pick and choose the ones that we want, and we can't change the way that we follow them. It has to be all of them, and it has to be exactly the way they were put out, because guess what? There are people who know more than us, and those rules are there to ensure our safety and everything runs smoothly. Number 2, always ask permission before touching, borrowing, or using an item that is not yours. Number 3, wrongdoing should never just be covered up. Remember, take accountability, and we talked about that in the last chapter. I believe we talked about accountability as well. Number 4, be truthful at all times. Number 5, Do not take more than your allotted time for breaks and lunch without permission. Number 6, give credit where credit is due. Never take credit for someone else's work. Again, stealing. Number 7, do not usurp authority. Ask permission first and accept the answer is given. Now, it's almost worse to ask permission and then go and do the exact opposite of what you were told to do. So if you already went to the effort to ask, just do what they say to do. Like, you already made the first step to making the right choice. Now follow through with it, right? Next one is honesty builds trust. Be honest and be trustworthy. And the last one is practice being responsible. Responsible people can be honest because they don't have to cover up poor choices, right? It's always easier to do it right the first time and have to go back and undo it. At the bottom it says there's so much more to being honest than meets the eye. And that concludes chapter 7. So I have a few more minutes, so it's going to run through and review for the next teachers. Honesty is a must in the workplace. It's absolutely necessary. And we are honest by when we accept responsibility, and it gains trust and confidence, right? And then we talked about on page 124 that to be honest is to be truthful, fair, free of lies, and sincere. Page 125, we talked about that honesty means following the rules. 126 means being truthful, means giving credit to others, it means being trustworthy, being on time, makes the schedules if you need to. Being on time is page 129. Page 131 that we just talked about, not usurping authority, taking the time to go through the proper procedures because they're there for a reason, and not stealing someone's reputation, the last one. And when we think about it, honesty, it's woven into the fabric of our lives, right? Every single part of our day is run smoothly because someone chose to be honest, someone chose to be responsible, someone chose to be respectful and value all life as important. And when we choose to do that and we teach other people to choose to do that, we can build not just workplaces, but lives that are built on respect and care and consideration for others and ourselves. All right, so that concludes our class for this evening, and can we all stand for closing prayer?